Howdy, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Bean on the Scene. I am Alma Bean, and let's get right into it. So, we are currently live streaming on X, Twitch, YouTube. Feel free to go to any of those locations if you'd like to tune in live. If not, this will be available in full at the end of the live stream. If you want to tune in on X, it is at AlmaBean23. If you want to tune in on Twitch, it is Mr. Beanie Baby 19. And then on YouTube, it is Bean on the Scene 801. So let's get right into it. We have college football that's going to be starting in 11 days here in the state of Utah, and a lot of people are very antsy about it. A lot of people are also just weirdly overly immersed in it. But I feel like that's how it happens when it comes to football. But just as a reminder, these are all the games that will be taking place starting August 30th. The first game will be Weber State at James Madison, and that game will be at 4 p.m. Mountain Time on ESPN Plus. The next game with Utah affiliation will be Utah State versus UTEP. That game will be at 5:30 Mountain Time on the CBS Sports Network. Then the next game will be BYU versus Portland State at 6 p.m. And that will also be on ESPN Plus. But what makes that game more interesting is that today BYU went ahead and announced that Bear Bachmeier, true freshman, has been named the starting quarterback. And there has been a lot of conversation whether or not it should be McKay Hillstead or Bear Bachmeier. For the people that I know that have been able to witness these games and practices, Bear Bachmeier has just been showing a tremendous amount of growth, even though he wasn't there for the spring since he was originally enrolled at Stanford. But with this transfer, I believe BYU is going to play really well, especially with his brother Tiger making his presence known for BYU and had been mentioned that most likely he will be a bigger representation in this offense this year. Um, I genuinely think that for BYU, this is such a smart move. It allows for Bear to grow with the team and lead them for the next 2 to 3 years while they wait for highly touted 5-star recruit Ryder Lyons to come to BYU after he serves his mission. So not only can you have somebody that can truly lead this team, you're also going to have somebody that's going to be able to take over the helm as they are ready to move on from Bachmeier. But again, you still got plenty of years before you even have to think about that. But even though he will be facing tougher competition than what we have seen on tape, I just want to mention that in high school, for all the games that Bachmeier did start, he threw for 6,726 yards with 478 completions, 703 attempts, which, if you're doing the quick math, that is 68%. He had 59 passing touchdowns to 14 interceptions. But to go along with that, he also had 1,714 rushing yards with 33 rushing touchdowns. And that was roughly about 6 rushing attempts per game that he ended up having. 5 of his games that he started, he had at least 100 rushing yards, 100 plus rushing yards. And then he even had one game where he had 200 rushing yards. And I know what you're thinking. Oh, if he had 200 rushing yards, he's probably not throwing the ball too much. Well, you're wrong, because in that game, he threw for 404 passing yards and 204 rushing yards. And that was his sophomore year in 2022. So you know that he has that in the tank. Now, how well is that going to work at the Big 12 level? Who knows? But when you got a quarterback that wears 47, like Cam Newton said, he's giving you guys a sign. Don't doubt Bear Bachmeier. He will run, he will lower his shoulder, and he will make a pretty major impact for this BYU offense. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it all comes about. But overall, I am super excited to see how he turns out, not only as just the prospect, but as Bachmeier progresses with this offense. I'm super excited to see what he's capable of doing. But back to the schedule, you also have Southern Utah versus Idaho State. That game will be at 6:30 p.m. That game will not be streamed, to my knowledge. Utah Tech versus University of California, Davis at 8 p.m. Mountain Time, and that game I believe will not be streamed either. And then the game that, in my opinion, probably has the most starting weight to it is Utah at UCLA. That game will be at 9 p.m. Mountain Time. So, when it comes to that game, you better be a night owl if you want to stick it out from start to finish. But that game will be on Fox. So you will definitely have a great viewpoint for that game. You'll be able to see how Utah's offense has changed, whether it is the additions on the field or the additions for the coaching staff for Utah as well with Jason Beck. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they are going to transition, especially with such an early competitor like UCLA to start off their season. But just like we stated for BYU, how they named their starting quarterback, Kyle Whittingham stated that with the new Big 12 health regulations, he may not even release an official depth chart this year. And though it's kind of made its rounds on social media that Isaac Wilson has won the QB2 spot and Devin Dampier will be the starter, I mean, in my opinion, that's not necessarily news. When you bring in a guy like Devin Dampier, alongside with his offensive coordinator from New Mexico, Jason Beck, you would anticipate that you would move him to be your starter. But you also had that anticipation with McKay Hillstead and BYU, and now we have a true freshman quarterback starting over there. So to each their own, but this definitely would have been more news, in my opinion, if you would have seen that Dampier did not get the QB1 position. So got college football in 11 days. I'm super excited about it because I'm just ready to stop talking about speculation and I want to talk about what is actually going on the field. That is what I most want to see, what I most want to hear about, rather than just, oh, if this guy starts, this will happen, or if this guy is in this position, this is what will happen. No, I'm tired of that. Give me production on the field. And speaking of production on the field, even though college football hasn't started, we do have some locals in the NFL that will be playing in their final preseason game, and some even fighting for a final roster spot when it comes to the NFL's 53-man roster. So going down the list, there has been a few changes, but straight down, I have Caleb Etienne, offensive tackle from BYU, playing for the Cincinnati Bengals. As an offensive tackle, it's really hard to, track any stats when it comes to a offensive lineman, but he will be playing on Saturday versus the Indianapolis Colts at 11 a.m. Mountain Time. Then you have Connor O'Toole, defensive end from Utah, now plays for the Seattle Seahawks. So far in the preseason, he has 4 total tackles, 3 of them being solo, 1 assist, and 1 sack. He will be playing on Saturday, August 23rd at the Green Bay Packers, and that game will be at 2 p.m. Mountain Time on the NFL Network. Now, for this game between the Cleveland Browns and the LA Rams, we got a couple of Utah representatives in here. First one being Britton Covey, wide receiver who once attended the University of Utah, who's now playing for the Los Angeles Rams, who originally was playing for the Philadelphia Eagles before this season. So far in the preseason, he has 5 receptions for 44 yards. And then you have Tyler Huntley, quarterback from Utah, now playing for the Cleveland Browns. They kind of set out a depth chart for that game or for that team, and Snoop did not make that list. Tyler Huntley is most likely projected to be a QB5 if they even tend to have that many quarterbacks. I would highly anticipate him to be either released, traded, something along those lines. But overall, it's not looking great that he will be making a roster this upcoming season. But so far this preseason, Tyler Huntley, he is 16 for 21 on his passes with 121 passing yards, 1 touchdown, and 15 rushing yards. Again, that game will be on Saturday, August 23rd at 11 a.m. Mountain Time on the NFL Network. Now, I remember in our last episode, I already had a bunch of locals in the NFL typed out on my script just so then I don't forget names because I want to try and focus on the guys that are trying to make their way into the NFL for the first time. So I know that you're going to have other people like, say, your Devin Lloyds, your Jalen Johnsons, um, Taysom Hills. Like those are guys that I'm not covering when it comes to these type of lists. I want the guys that are fighting for a roster spot. So one of those players is Mekhi Bernard. I had originally stated that he played for the Tennessee Titans, and I managed to overlook that he was no longer playing with them and is now a part of the New England Patriots. Unfortunately, he has not seen any field time to try and produce any sort of stats, but Mekhi Bernard will be going up against the New York Giants, where Jackson Dart, quarterback from Corner Canyon, will be playing for the New York Giants, who currently during this preseason is 26 for 35 with 291 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns with 29 rushing yards, and 1 rushing touchdown. That game is going to be on Thursday, August 21st at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and that game will be covered on Prime Video. Another high schooler that has connections to the state of Utah is Buffalo tight end Jackson Hawes, who played at Highland. He will be playing against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Saturday, August 23rd at 5:30 p.m. Mountain Time. He has not produced any stats so far, but that doesn't mean that there won't be any in the near future. Now, for Minnesota versus, man, why did it not show what team they're playing against? Well, that is a hiccup on my end. But the Minnesota Vikings, they have multiple representatives for the locals in the NFL. First one is going to be Tyler Batty, who is a former defensive end for the BYU Cougars. So far in this preseason, he has 6 total tackles, 3 of them solo, 3 of them assist, with 1 pass deflection. But then you also have Zemiah Vaughn, former cornerback from the University of Utah, playing for Minnesota. He also has 6 total tackles, but 5 of them being solo, 1 assist with 1 pass deflection. Now, Minnesota, they will be at Tennessee on Friday, August 22nd, and that game will be at 6 p.m. Mountain Time on CBS. So you will be able to catch that one, no problem. Then you have Junior Tafuna, former defensive tackle for the University of Utah, playing for the Houston Texans. So far this preseason, he has 3 total tackles, 1 of them being solo, 2 of them being assisted. And he'll be going up against the Detroit Lions on Saturday, August 23rd at 11 a.m. Mountain Time. Then you have the Jacksonville Jaguars, who will be going up against Miami. So a friendly little Florida game. You have Jaquindon Jackson, who was the running back for Arkansas last season, but before he was in Arkansas, he was a member of the Utah Utes. So far this preseason, he has 5 carries for 9 yards. If I'm not mistaken, that was all done during last week's game against the New Orleans Saints. Then you have Dorian Singer, former wide receiver for Utah. He currently has 4 receptions, 48 total yards. And then you have former BYU quarterback Zach Wilson, who is currently 20 for 32, 246 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 5 sacks, which is not a good look if you're trying to make a roster, and then 16 total rushing yards. But again, that game will be on Saturday, August 23rd at 5 p.m. Mountain Time on the NFL Network. Then you have another high school representation for the state of Utah in Jeffrey Bossa, who went to Kearns, former linebacker. He is now playing for Kansas City, and he is making a very big and noticeable impact for the Kansas City Chiefs. He currently has 12 total tackles, 7 of them solo, and 5 assisted. So that is a great thing to see. But another person that has high school connections for the state of Utah that will be playing in this game is Xavier Carlton, defensive end for the Chicago Bears. He currently has 1 pass deflection and a fumble recovery for the Bears. And then you have Jalen Royals, former wide receiver for Utah State, now playing for Kansas City. For this season, preseason, he currently has 3 receptions for 14 yards, but he has 2 kick returns for 75 total yards. This game will be taking place on Friday, August 22nd at 6:20 p.m. That game will not be broadcasted as far as I'm aware, but there is a lot of representation here. But the game that probably has the most Utah representation, in my opinion, is going to be the Denver Broncos. So this game has Jonah Ellis, former member of the Utah Utes. He currently has 3 total tackles, 2 solo, 1 assisted. Then you have Caleb Lohner, former tight end for Utah, with 1 reception and 4 yards. And that was, I believe, in their game last week. Then you have Corinne Reed, former linebacker for Utah, with 5 total tackles, 2 solo, 1 assisted, and 1 interception. And Devon Vele, former Utah Ute, with 1 reception and 6 yards. And I know that that was a lot to take in because there was a lot of Utah representation for this preseason roster. But the Denver Broncos, they will be at New Orleans on Saturday, August 23rd at 11 a.m. And that game will not be broadcasted as far as I'm aware. If you are a Broncos fan, you are very familiar with local blackouts, which is very unfortunate, but it's what you got to do when you are the NFL. But one player that I did not list who was recently cut, unfortunately, was Darius Lassiter, former wide receiver for BYU. He was on the preseason roster for the Jacksonville Jaguars, but as we get closer to the season, cuts need to be made to make that 53-man requirement. And unfortunately, the Jaguars did not see Darius Lassiter as a member of that 53, which again is completely fine. There's still plenty of other ways to play in the NFL or to play professional football as a whole, whether you end up being a practice squad guy, injury recovery type of person, or even other leagues like, say, the UFL. There's multiple opportunities to try and make it into this business, but unfortunately, the Jaguars did not see Lassiter as a member of their final 53. Now, moving on to the Utah Royals. The Royals are really struggling as they are currently the last place team in the NWSL with a record of 1-4-11 with 7 total points to their resume. In their last 5 matches, they've gone 0-2-3, which for those of you who are not familiar with soccer, the first number is amount of wins, second number is the amount of draws, and the final number is the amount of losses. So they've won 0 games, they've tied 2 games, and they've lost 3 games in their last 5 matches. In their last 10 matches, they've won 0 games, tied 3 games, and lost 7 games, with their only win of the season coming on April 18th. And yes, I did say that right. It is currently August 19th as we are recording this. And the Utah Royals have not won since April 18th against Chicago Stars FC 1-0. So it is a very gruesome season for the Utah Royals. They do have a lot of talented players on their team, like Bianca St. George, Brecken Mozingo, Mina Tanaka. They have talented players on this roster, but some of these other squads just manage to pick them apart where they're the weakest. And unfortunately, it has led to Utah not being able to get more wins on the board. But their next game is going to be on Saturday, August 23rd at Gotham FC at 5:30 p.m. Mountain Time on the Ion channel. But pregame will start at 5 p.m. Mountain Time on the KSL Sports Zone, starting on 97.5 FM, and then finishing on 12:80 a.m. Now for Real Salt Lake, RSL, after having an amazing 7-game run going into the Leagues Cup, going 5-1-1, RSL has now gone 2-0-3, with those 2 wins coming during Leagues Cup play. With their last 8 games left in the season and being on the outside looking in for the playoffs, RSL needs to lock in for every single game possible, as with those final 8 matches, 6 of them are against teams that are above RSL in the playoff picture. Now, with the next game for RSL, which is going to also be on Saturday, August 23rd. That game will be at home versus Minnesota United FC, which is one of those 6 teams that is above RSL for that playoff positioning. That game will start at 7:30 p.m. Mountain Time, where pregame will be starting at 6:30 p.m. Mountain Time on the KSL Sports Zone, starting on 12:80 a.m. and then finishing the game on 97.5 FM after the conclusion of the Utah Royals. Now, moving over to the Utah Jazz, we did end up having a schedule release. I know a lot of people were confused on why the Jazz only had 80 games scheduled. Well, that was pretty much every single team because when it comes to the in season tournament, um, they leave a gap open for the teams that are going to be participating in the, I guess, final four for that cup title. So they wait until they know who has qualified, who will be going on to that final four, and then they will show the other 2 games for those teams. So 80 of the 82 games have been released to the public. And overall, I mean, it wasn't really too much to anticipate for Utah Jazz fans because even before the schedule was released, Vegas was putting out odds that the Jazz would win no more than 18 and a half games this year. And, you're doing math, 82 games, you know, going 18 and 62 or whatever, um, 18 and 64 is not a good look. Um, and I mean, I know that a lot of fans want to go for AJ DeBonsa or one of the Boozer boys. It's just not good. So when you already have that expectation before you even know where the games are going to line up, it's going to get a little difficult. But overall, it is what it is, and people are just going to have to roll with the punches. But the home opener is going to be on October 22nd versus the LA Clippers, and that game can be deemed as the John Collins return. So they're getting that one out of the way very quickly. I believe that it is a well-deserved positioning for John Collins. I believe the Clippers might be a little more interesting to watch this season given the adjustments that they've made to their roster this year, including Bradley Beal and getting someone like John Collins and Chris Paul. So you're getting some really good guys. Granted, Father Time might not be on their side, but overall, that's how you're going to sell tickets. You're going to have a lot of people that want to see Chris Paul of old, and I mean, he still has gas in the tank. So hopefully, having a guy like CP3 can ignite something for Bradley Beal, who has been very lackluster since his time in Phoenix. As far as nationally televised games that Utah has, they are at the bottom of the listing. They only have 2 nationally televised games this season. First one being on January 27th against the LA Clippers, and that game will be on NBC and Peacock. And then their second and final nationally televised game is going to be on February 23rd at Houston, and that game will be on Peacock. Now, their longest homestand is going to be 6 games from January 20th to the 30th, with the 20th being against Minnesota, 22nd against San Antonio, 24th against Miami, the 27th against the LA Clippers, 28th against Golden State, and then their final game of that 6-game homestand will be on the 30th against the Brooklyn Nets. Now, as far as their longest road trips, the Jazz have 3 5-game road trips this season. First one's pretty much right off the bat, starting on October 31st until November 7th. The 31st will be Phoenix, the 2nd against Charlotte, the 3rd against Boston, 5th against Detroit, and then 7th against Minnesota. And then they don't have another long road trip like that again until January 12th through the 19th, where the 12th will be Cleveland, 14th against Chicago, 15th against Dallas, 17th against Dallas, and then 19th against San Antonio. And then their final 5-game road trip of the season will be February 1st through the 9th, where the first will be in Toronto, 3rd against Indiana, 5th against Atlanta, 7th against Orlando, and then the 9th against the Miami Heat. Now, what I deem the hardest stretch of this season for the Jazz is going to be January 12th through the 30th, because you're going from a 5-game road trip into a 5-game homestand But all of those teams that they're going to be facing, except for one, which is the Brooklyn Nets, are all going to be considered playoff contenders going into this season. So I genuinely think that it's going to be hard for them to go Cleveland, Chicago, Dallas, San Antonio, then doing a back to back going from the 19th against San Antonio to the 20th against Minnesota, facing Minnesota again on the 22nd, Miami, LA Clippers, Golden State Warriors, and then finishing off with the Brooklyn Nets. I think that that's going to be a lot tougher than people will make it out to be. And I know some people will say, oh, well, you're going to have a 6-game homestand after you just had a 5-game road trip. Yes, but that's a lot of wear and tear against some really good teams. So I think that that stretch is going to look really rough. You're going to have a better understanding of what this Utah Jazz team is by that time of the season. And you're really going to start having some people that are making decisions for the trade deadline to make that initial push for the playoffs or prep for the upcoming draft. So again, January 12th through the 30th, I just think pretty much the month of January is just going to be a really tough one for the Jazz. And it's really sad. As far as the easiest stretch, this is also really sad in my opinion. I believe it's the first 5 games that they have for the season. So the 22nd versus the Clippers, 24th at Sacramento, 27th versus Phoenix, 29th versus Portland, and then the 31st at Phoenix. When you look at those teams, I personally see the Clippers as a playoff team, but with them just now having these new acquisitions, I think that they're still going to have to work out some chemistry, and the Jazz might be able to, sneak one by them. Sacramento, I think that they have decent players to work with, but again, I think that Sacramento is kind of going back to the dumpster fire that they once were, and unfortunately, a potential laughing stock of the league once again, because even Kings fans are trying to figure out what direction is this team trying to go in ever since they got rid of De'Aaron Fox. Then you go with Phoenix again. Even though Devin Booker is most likely going to drop 40 or 50 points in this game, I still think that there's a lot of question marks when it comes to Phoenix. And I think Phoenix is still going to try and figure out what those question marks are. But that game is going to rely heavily on Devin Booker and him being able to get close to a triple-double in that game. Even when he was playing against the Jazz last season, it seemed like if he didn't get near a triple-double, Phoenix didn't look like they were anywhere near in contention for this game. Then you have Portland. Again, it's a battle of the bottom between these two teams, even with the additions of Drew Holiday and Damian Lillard. Do you really lean into that veteran leadership and let them take the helm? Or do you want to go back and focus on some youth development with guys like Shaden Sharp? And then hopefully, because he's always injured, Robert Williams III, just getting those type of guys out there on the court, or Donovan Clingan. You really just got to figure out what direction this team wants to take. And hopefully we'll have an answer to that one by this time on October 29th, but who knows? And then again, same thing applies with Phoenix on the 31st. Devin Booker, he's going to ball out regardless. It's just a matter of what the rest of that team is going to do. And that's a big question mark for me. But outside of the schedule, the Jazz did have a few other things come along. Fan favorite Oscar Tshiebwe, he did re-sign with the Utah Jazz on another 2-way contract. I know a lot of people have been questioning why he hasn't been around, or why he did a junior Jazz tour, speaking with the kids, and then no contract right then and there. The NBA is a business, and you got to figure out what you got to do. But there's still no word on if there's a Kevin Love buyout. I know there's still conversations, but there could be a possibility that Kevin Love could be in a Utah Jazz uniform to start the 2025-26 season. But with that being said, all 15 roster spots are currently taken, and the Jazz only have one 2-way roster spot left. But they still have a non-guaranteed contract for KJ Martin. Now, what they would have to do, they would have to release KJ Martin and essentially say that his contract is void because they can't take him, and just let him go into free agency. Or I don't know if this is technically allowed. But I personally would want KJ Martin on the two-way contract because he did prove that he is a very streaky basketball player, but he can provide when it's needed. And if you get him some G League minutes, he will show that he probably shouldn't belong in the G League and he should be at the NBA level. But I have also said that about Kenny Lofton Jr., and he is currently neither on an NBA roster or a G League roster. So I could be wrong, but I do believe in KJ Martin's ability to play basketball. And I really hope that the Jazz figure out what they're planning on doing, just because that rumor for Kevin Love has been around since he got traded to Utah. So we'll see what happens. Now, for the Utah Mammoth, um, Logan Cooley and Clayton Keller, they were both named to the U.S. Men's Olympic Orientation Camp. Now, this does not guarantee that they will both be in Milan come February for the Olympics, but it's a great sign seeing them receive their flowers after leading Team USA to their first gold medal win in nearly 100 years in this summer's World Championships. And before the Olympics begin, this roster does have to be narrowed down to 25 players, which this current orientation camp had 44 players listed. And typically with these rosters, you'll do 22 skaters and 3 goalies. So there's a lot of people that are going to be on the chopping block. A lot of people are going to yell snubs immediately. But again, it's not a guarantee. It's just a great sign that they're finally getting the recognition that a lot of fans believe that the NHL should be giving to both Cooley and Keller. But speaking of worlds, Salt Lake City native Schaefer Gordon Carroll ended up helping lead Team USA over Sweden to win the Hlinka Gretzky Cup this past Saturday, tallying 1 goal and 1 assist during that tournament. Now, SGC was drafted 9th in the WHL US Prospects Draft in 2023, but playing behind the likes of potential first overall pick in the NHL next year, Gavin McKenna on the Medicine Hat Tigers, I expect a big jump from Schaefer Gordon Carroll, as he is now touted as one of the top prospects for the 2027 NHL entry draft. Now that we have made our way NHL to WHL, now let's talk about hockey here in Utah. Our friend Cole Bagley is going to be joining the Ultimate Goalie Showdown on August 29th in Ogden. And I'm honestly really looking forward to seeing him skate, just because the only time I've ever seen him skate was when he was teaching Hans Olsen about how difficult the sport of hockey is when Olsen was put in full goalie gear and has now put respect on the sport of hockey. If you haven't seen the video, I highly recommend you look it up online. Really funny stuff. But if you'd really like to see Cole Bagley on the ice alongside with guys like Theo Fleury, Swaggy P, Gabe Gauthier, on the bench boys, and many more. We got some Mammoth players that are looking to be going, some University of Utah hockey players that are planning on going that have yet to be announced. I highly recommend going to ultimategoalie.com to go ahead and get your tickets, whether you want to participate or if you want to just watch. I highly recommend it. And if I'm not mistaken, there should be a meet and greet of some kind at the end of this game. So if you really want to, meet some high profile individuals in the world of hockey, highly recommend making your way up to Ogden on August 29th. But on a more serious note, there have been a lot of fires that have been popping up in the state of Utah as the summer is coming to a close. And one of those fires ended up hitting a little too close to home in downtown Salt Lake. There were some businesses that were losses, people abruptly without jobs. And right now, jobs are really hard to come by. It's really slim pickings at the moment. But our friend Mike, who is the owner of Mountain Mike's in Herriman and South Jordan, and I know what you're thinking, Mike and Mike. My friend Mike is not the Mountain Mike. But he owns locations in Herriman and in South Jordan. And on Wednesday, so tomorrow, August 20th, he will be donating 15% of all purchases, and that means dine-in and delivery, he'll be donating 15% of all purchases in partnership with the Downtown Alliance towards helping the displaced staff from those businesses that have been lost. Now, for those addresses, I personally will be going to the Herriman location, which is at 14728 South Marketplace Drive. And then you also have the South Jordan location, which I know Herriman can be far for some. So if you don't want to drive all the way out there, you could always go to the South Jordan location, which is at 3785 West South Jordan Parkway. So, it's all for a great cause. I would really hope that there was a way that if I was in that position, that people would be able to help me one way or another. But, it's a really scary time for some of these people, and I wish them the best. I really hope that a decent amount of people will come out and, partner up with Mountain Mike and really help out these people, because it could be single college students that are just trying to have some money in their pocket, but it also could be a mother of four, and this was their way to feed their family. So I really hope that people go out and they participate and, do your duty to help out the community one way or another. But final thing, and while we've been out on recording this, there is currently a press conference where, to be honest, if it's already done, I'm sorry. But there is a press conference being held by SEG as we speak, speaking on the development of downtown Salt Lake. And as quoted, it is the first major announcement regarding SEG's plan for the heart of the sports, entertainment, culture, and convention center district in downtown Salt Lake City. So that could mean a lot of things, whether that is involving the buildings themselves, the plans as far as what sort of events they plan on having in downtown Salt Lake, any sort of construction, whether that is to the roads, walkways, or maybe even any sort of additional things, like what sort of businesses they want to add to that area. So if it's already going on and it's already ended, you can catch that full interview on the KSL Sports app. As of right now, it would currently be on the JJ and Alex show. So that should be posted later today. If it's still going on, go tune in. 97.5 FM or 1280 AM. You can still catch that there if it's still going on. But there should be a lot of great information for those of you that want to know what's going to be happening in your city, especially when you have hockey that needed renovation for the Delta Center. The Jazz is now being impacted by there being a hockey team here. You have the Olympics coming right around the corner, so you want to make sure that you have the best accommodations for anyone coming in internationally and not making it seem like it's overcrowded, even though that might sound like it's so far away when it's 2034. But 9 years to change an entire city. You've seen places like, say, the World Cup where they had locations selected that hadn't even been developed. And then by the time they get out there, they may not even be done, or they look absolutely phenomenal. So I'm excited to see what happens with this initial meeting, this initial press conference. But I, at this point, trust what's going to happen, trust the process, and everything will be just fine. But again, highly recommend paying attention to that press conference. Check it out. Go help out Mountain Mike's and the Downtown Alliance. And again, Ultimate Goalie Showdown. Be involved with more things in the community. As far as links go, I will be dropping links for the Ultimate Goalie Showdown and the addresses for the locations that are participating in that donation for the Downtown Alliance. That being said, that is another Bean on the Scene. I am Alma Bean, and y'all enjoy the rest of your